California's home insurance market faces a new threat. No, it's not wildfire. It's not super expensive or canceled wildfire insurance. It's after the wildfire, rain comes, all the plants and vegetation that would normally absorb that rain, not there. Flooding. Flooding is your new major homeowners risk. Nobody has flood insurance unless you're in a flood zone. Let's get into it. What does this look like? Here we go.
Okay, you might think homeowners insurance or renters insurance would cover damage from flooding like that, but in fact, it will not. GSA's David Gofferson is working for you. He talked to an expert on flood insurance and found out why you might want to get it. He joins us live from Mountain View. David.
Oh, horrible.
The thing that people need to recognize is that their home insurance policy will not cover damage done by a flood.
Flood.
In the United States, flood insurance is...
Unless it's like a hot water tank that explodes, they'll cover that. But that's internal flooding. We're talking about water coming in from the outside. Unless you have flood insurance, you're probably not covered. Check with your home insurance carrier.
You can learn about how to get the flood insurance coverage, but you can't get flood insurance the day of or the day after the flood. So that's one of the things for people who are just recognizing that their home insurance...
I need flood insurance. Too late.
Is not going to be a solution you can do retroactively. If you live in what's considered a very high risk flood zone based on the national flood maps, you will be required to have it attached.
That's just terrible.
To buy that secondary policy. But the vast majority of Americans are not in those high risk flood zones, so they're not required to buy the flood insurance.
Well, this one is though.
Situation like we do.
Terrible.
Maximum coverage limit of $250,000 plus and less for the contents of your home. So your home may cost more than what the flood coverage policy will provide you to rebuild if there is a complete damage to your home. But $250,000 is certainly better than nothing.
Well, what does it cost? Can you give me a ballpark figure what it might cost you?
Sure. The cost of flood insurance really ranges, and there have been changes over the last.
Man, that's some water.
Flood insurance. But in California, the average premium is somewhere in the $800 to $900 a year range.
So less than $100 a month, $70, $80.
Vehicles were damaged with water and mud as well. And there is some good news. If you've got full comprehensive coverage on your vehicle, that water damage should be coverage. However, you're still going to have to pay your deductible.
Seems like we're continuously facing a new threat, right? If it's not that, it's that. This one makes sense. I was watching the Adam Carolla show, and he's been kind of going up and down Pacific Coast Highway because he's got a condo there, and he's trying to get back into his condo. If you don't remember Adam Carolla, he did that Loveline show with Dr. Drew way back in the day on MTV. Probably the first guy to really do some podcasting, along with Tom Green and Joe Rogan, of course. But he basically had a segment where you had all the fire come down on the Palisades fire. And so all that vegetation is gone, and restaurant called Duke's on Pacific Coast Highway, it survived the wildfires, didn't get burned up. But then after all the vegetation is gone, homes are burned up, things that would normally absorb all that rainfall coming down on a hillside. Just went right into Duke's, just destroyed it. I mean, a super iconic restaurant there. That was just, it's tough to watch. So it's like this double whammy. All right, fire burns everything. We just got fire. And then a Noah-like flood comes along and just takes whatever it did, survive the fires and just blasts it with a bunch of water. Devastating mudslides and flooding are likely to become the number one risk for California homeowners in the next 25 years, outgrowing the threat posed by wildfires, according to a news case study by CoreLogic. Why it matters, our next section. Climate change exacerbating. Okay, so here's the rub. Private insurers want to price their insurance rates, taking into account higher costs to rebuild because everything's gone up, inflation's gone up, and growing catastrophe exposure. While regulators, insurance commissioners, are trying to satisfy their rate hike requests. Hey, these guys want more rate hikes, but we don't want to give it to them because we want to protect the people. and then the people are having their insurance policies canceled. So while regulators are trying to satisfy their rate hike requests while also keeping premiums affordable for homeowners. Man, between fire insurance, regular home insurance, flood insurance, there's nothing affordable about this. So, well, you probably need a fire insurance policy and a flood insurance policy. Let's just go ahead and basically double the cost of our homeowners insurance. And this is excluding insurance for anything else, right? Healthcare insurance, car insurance, all of those good things. You're just getting ramrodded with all of this stuff because of greater risk. In some of the most disaster-prone areas of the country, including the Golden State, problems are piling up. In Southern California, the same areas ravaged by wildfires in January were hit by flooding last month. Let's take a look at that. California Flood Watch raises risk of mudslides days after wildfire containment. That's where I kind of started tuning into this. And I'm like, oh, that's a double whammy. And it makes absolute sense when you think it through. It's just that timing. Oh, we need rain to stop the fires. Oh, we need the rain to stop the flooding. It's just you're going from one natural disaster to another. Heavy rain could produce flooding, mudslides, and debris flow in northern and central California, and it's expected to take aim at Los Angeles by the middle of the week. And it did. And it had some pretty horrific results. Bunch of businesses were taken out. Homes were taken out. I mean, streets were closed down. That was just a lot of water. What to know? According to the data from the Nature Conservancy, 8.8 million acres in California are at risk from flooding, the equivalent of about 16% of its urban and suburban development, and 36% of its land dedicated to cultivated crops. So it's not crazy bad. It's not like New Orleans or something along those lines, right? Areas of Florida where you've just got, this isn't good. You already got that, higher levels of groundwater, and then you get a little rain and you're like, we're now back to an island. While wildfire risk, drought, and heat waves may be more prevalent in western states like California, across the U.S., flooding is the most frequent and costly natural disaster in the United States. I've had the home that I live in right now that I own. It has flooded numerous times because it's a flat lot and we're kind of midway down a hill and then it goes further down. And when it rains over about 2 inches within a 2-day run, groundwater seeps up in through the foundation. Yeah, I get a bunch of water. It's a lot of fun. So, got about 1 million homes in LA, San Diego, and San Francisco that are currently facing low flood risk, and they'll see their flood increase by 40 points or more by 2050. So what they're saying is that, all right, it's minimal now, but as we've got this accelerated climate change thing going on down the road, this is not looking good. Flood insurance, mandatory for people who probably don't even think about it right now. Just it's a non-factor, along with a lot of folks who are like, I don't think we need fire insurance. Big fire comes. Well, let's check into it. Let's see if we are eligible. Because things that haven't been happening, consistently over time are now happening. So Californians are not ready. Flood damage is not covered by traditional homeowners insurance or renters insurance policies, and few private flood insurance options are available. Instead, residents and communities participating in the Federal Emergency Management Act, that's FEMA, flood insurance program, can purchase flood insurance through the agency. It's kind of like buying flood insurance through, one of these state-run programs, except this is federal. In the appraisal world, every property that you appraise, you have to identify if it's in a FEMA zone. So you got to look up the FEMA flood map and then the actual specific location of where that home is on a FEMA flood map and make an assertion. Is it in a flood map or no? And, sometimes you'll say, it looks like one to me, and you'll put the code down on your appraisal, and they'll come back with, well, we ran a flood certification, and it's not in a flood zone. Yeah, well, that river down at the bottom of their site, well, the house is elevated above the river. So you get into those kind of arguments. And then people sometimes have to get flood insurance when they didn't think that they were in a flood zone. It's kind of up to who's looking at the risk, who's looking at the map. Is it in a 100-year designated zone? All that good stuff. See that river over there? Yeah, that floods when it rains really bad. Here's something interesting. Precipitation-based flood risk is not currently shown on FEMA's flood maps, meaning when it rains real hard, what's the impact? And neither is the added risk posed by wildfires, which increase the likelihood of flooding during storms. It's important to remember that while flood insurance requirements are based on the FEMA flood maps, floods do not follow lines on a map, and the FEMA flood maps do not account for all types of flood risk and do not account for growing risk as a result of climate change. Whew. So what happens next is our next segment here. Flooding can cause billions of dollars in damages. Yep. All right. 1 inch of water. FEMA estimates that 1 inch of water can cause as much as $25,000 in damages. You know, to get somebody out there and just kind of rip out the basics and get it dried up, it's like 10 grand. Yeah, they come in with these moisture meters and, oh yeah, you still got a little bit of, still a little bit of moisture in your walls. We need to leave these, machines in your home running full time. They quadrant everything off with plastic, so they create this little sauna experiment where they're trying to dry out all the moisture from your home. So $25K in damages, yeah, it adds up super, super fast. I usually just tear out the carpets, now no longer have carpets, kind of working my way through all that stuff, right? Putting some sump pumps outside below the area where water seeps in between the foundation wall and the slab concrete. So we're coming up with solutions, but it's one of those things where water just comes in after it rains a whole bunch, but it's not coming down, it's coming up through the foundation. You get a lot of that when you've got an area where water just isn't going where it should be going. I got all my downspouts squared away, though. They're going out to the street. They're going out to the storm drains. But still, you've got water coming up from the ground. A lot of times that's what you're working with. You're like, why is it flooding? Well, because water goes where water goes, right? Rob Bott, an insurance analyst for LendingTree, told Politico that an average flood insurance policy is about $866 annually, or $72 per month. Okay, that doesn't sound crazy, but if you're not in a flood zone, are you going to voluntarily go out and get this? Yeah, just tag it on. I just bought this $1 million home. You know what? I'm paying out the rear end for all kinds of stuff. So let's just throw another 72 on the monthly payment, right? Let's get that payment up to 15 grand, whatever it is, 10 grand, who knows, depending on your down payment and all that other stuff, interest rates, right? So it's not super expensive, but it's one more fee. And if you're already looking at fire insurance, one more fee on top of that, because this is, for the most part, voluntary. Flood insurance is voluntary unless you're in an area deemed to be high risk by FEMA, right? And then the lender is going to state, and that's why they want it on the appraisal, the lender is going to state, no, we're not lending you money unless you purchase a flood insurance policy that names us as the beneficiary in case you ditch out and we got to go fix your house and we got to take over as the lender. So why is this such a big deal? Because flood damage is not covered by traditional homeowners or renters insurance. Without flood insurance coverage, a household that experiences a flood event may have to pay for damages out of pocket or rely on federal disaster assistance, which we know how reliable that is, which is not guaranteed, yeah, no kidding, and can take months to reach impacted households. And you might just be straight up denied. Yeah, no, ran out of money, Congress. They always come up with, it's those guys. They're doing something. So bottom line is, down the road, you're going to have a bunch more areas across the United States that, due to wildfire and due to, changing climate, it's going to have some more rainfall. When that rainfall comes, it's going to turn areas that didn't necessarily used to have flood potential into flood area zones. So, and it doesn't have to do with a river. It doesn't have to do with a lake spilling over. It doesn't have to do with storm runoff. It doesn't have to do with that creek near my cabin. One of those kind of things. It doesn't, I don't have a cabin, by the way. It doesn't have to do with that. It has to do with rain coming down and the water has nowhere to go. It doesn't get absorbed by what it used to. And boom. You've got flood potential. So seems like we're getting hit by just all kinds of stuff. Do you hunker down in your little concrete box somewhere and hope that you don't get hit by fire, flooding, tornado, hurricane? Nah, you just live your life and you make your adjustments based on your budget as best you can. If you're in an area that seems like it has flood potential, maybe you check that insurance out. But I think what most people recognize is that they do not have flood insurance and they probably don't need it. But the reality is that the risk for flood insurance, for flood hazard potential is rising probably more quickly than we give credit to. Like seems to be accelerating. The wildfires seem to be accelerating, seem to be having more and more of those. So this is one of those things. Weather has a pattern. That's kind of my belief. Whether you believe it's, climate change because of what we've done to the environment, I don't think that's a thing. I think it's long-term weather patterns that are changing, and we need to recognize, all right, if you live in an area where you're going to be impacted, then look at what insurance you need and make that part of your decision-making process if you're going to be moving out of an area or moving into an area, because it used to be, well, just buy the home, you can get whatever insurance you need to cover whatever, possible impact to your home might come down the road. That's not necessarily the case anymore. Hey, can you get us a fire insurance policy? No. Oh, how come? Too risky. Your house might burn down. We don't want to take on the liability of that. Oh, okay. All right. For things that you didn't think were necessarily threats before, now they're becoming a threat. And so you got to kind of analyze those. So pretty soon we're just going to be head on a swivel. What's coming next, right? What else is going to take me down? What is going to happen? Tornado insurance? Do I need that? Yesterday, we literally here in Bellevue, Seattle, we had a possible tornado event. I covered up all my plants, my early spring plants that are, the hardy plants, got a bunch of lettuce and stuff. And I covered that up because we were told that golf ball sized hail balls were going to be coming down. It didn't, but it could have happened. So you want to be prepared. But do you want to be that guy with insurance just all loaded up with insurance? No, probably not. Be reasonable, be realistic, and recognize, something that's not necessarily in a FEMA flood zone, it still might flood. That's not good. You don't want that. All right. That's it for me on this one. Thanks so much for being here. I'll catch up with you in the next one. Bye for now.